Oops. I just pulled my webcam down. Does it still work? Just a second. Yeah, it still works. What up? Over to Silithus, and we will begin the Grand Crusade. Alright, give me 1 second here. Let me pause this and we'll watch a video while we wait for everybody to get together, okay? Bellier video. I don't know if we're going to watch that right now. I was thinking about actually, this is something that's kind of interesting to me. So I want to watch this one instead. Let me go turn on my main cam and see how long it lasts this time. I've actually been thinking about what was the day that I began Dark Souls 1? What was the day? What day was it? Let me look it up. Okay, Asmongold, Dark Souls 1. Okay. First stream 10 months ago. So the odds are he probably released it December 3rd. So this is me a year ago playing Dark Souls. This is also 10 months ago. December 2nd. So it basically happened on the 1st or 2nd of December. I've thought that for the 1 year anniversary of that I could come back and play Dark Souls 2. I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you think? You guys like that? Thoughts? Thoughts and opinions? Perspectives and ideas? You guys like that? So for the 1 year anniversary, Dark Souls 2 is so bad though, I feel like it'll be fine. If the game's bad, it's not going to be a big deal anyway. It doesn't make a difference. You'll be sniped by Malcolm Reynolds. Yeah, he sniped me back in the Dark Souls 1 as well. So let's see here. Yeah, I'm looking at these, and a lot of them it did seem like it was from December 3rd. Look at this, man. I'm so mad, dude. Like this is. Look at this. Look at the fucking picture, man. Best of Asmongold. But this is insane. Look at these fucking videos. I don't even know, man. You gonna stick with it? No, yeah, I hope you're in a stable mind. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'll probably get mad, but, I mean, it would be interesting to do. Like, I remember, like, this is, honestly, I remember, I look back and this was fun, right? I mean, like, doing Dark Souls 1 I enjoyed. Dark Souls 3 was a little bit too serious in my mind, but Dark Souls 1 was fucking great. What is this here? Like, I just really like the game. I think that's really all there is to it. Where is this here? Let's see. Is there anything else going on? Hollow Soldier. I thought this was whenever I killed the fucking boss. Oh, that's right. I didn't do that. Yeah, here we go. Hey, dude. The literal god. Actual literal god right here. How the fuck do I avoid that? Okay, how the fuck do you do this? Okay. Okay, so then, and you look at the tail's a fucking axe. So he's got... It was a good time. It was. Like, let me see. Hardest hitting abilities. Wow. Okay, just a second. I'm going to try and find this. Yeah, this is the video I wanted to watch while we get everybody over here. Okay. We're going to take a look at this and go through all of that, all right? Preach us a new video on replacement for Titan Forging. I'll look at that in a little bit. Again, guys, I want to make sure that everybody understands. Every single player in Olympus, every player on the Alliance on Faralina is now obligated and responsible for participating in the glorious crusade across Kalimdor. Every single one of you. So get on over here and get ready. It's going to take some people a while to get over here. So We're going to watch a video while we wait, and then we're going to begin the crusade. That's the plan right now, okay? What level's your walk now? He's 53 still.
In this video, we'll go over the hardest hidden abilities from WoW's history.
Okay.
Some rules on this list. It can be any class ability from any expansion, using whatever buffs and items were available to their class in a reasonable manner. And it will be excluding things like one-time damage buffs from bosses or one-time use items and stuff like that. And to start off this list, we'll go over with the vanilla WoW Presence of Mind Pyroblast with double spell power trinkets. Basically, a geared fire mage could use Presence of Mind in order to make Pyroblast instant cast, back when it had a longer than 5-second cast time and did a ton of damage because of that long cast time, as vanilla WoW used to balance spells around how long their cast time was.
That's how most mages
win.
win.
With 2 spell power trinkets combined, at a time before there was a cooldown on using trinkets together,
I thought they put each other on CD.
You could one-shot players guaranteed as long as it crit, and they had no other damage reduction modifiers. And sometimes it could even kill players without critting. Now, considering damage and health values change every expansion, and in fact every new raid tier, I'm going to be giving the damage done on—
Look at that, 4 fucking million, dude. Legion, 4 fucking million. That's insane.
This list, in terms of how much damage it does when compared to the average health of the average geared non-tank player from that expansion. So, PON Pyro Mages gets a 100% health bar as its rating. One of the few times in WoW's history where a player could one-shot another player pretty easily with one button, and in an official settings too. And at number 9, we have an ability which couldn't actually be used on players. And that's Vanilla WoW's Curse of Doom. Curse of Doom was a dot that lasted 1 minute and would only do damage at the end of that 1 minute. But it would do that damage in one large chunk. It was later changed over the course of WoW to do its damage along the way, like a normal dot. But they always made sure to give it a really long duration across basically all of its iterations.
It was ridiculous. It was just
the amount of damage it did, if it could be cast on a player, could easily one-shot a player. But not much more than that. So it makes it on this list for one of the hardest hidden abilities in the game for that reason.
That's true.
Remember, these abilities don't actually have to be usable on players. I'm just using the average player's health as a metric in order to properly gauge how much damage these things did. And the number 9 and 10 spots basically just get 100%, being able to do about one person's health as damage. All the other ones will be a little bit higher than that. And at number 8, we have Touch of Death. This is an ability added in Mist of Pandaria with the Monk class and allowed them to instantly kill a mob about once every 2 minutes, give or take.
And
it never actually did say how much damage it did. It would just instantly kill mobs. Or, if used on a boss or something with more health than the monk, it would instead do damage equal to the monk's health.
It was ridiculous.
So, if used on the tanking spec of the monk and popping a cooldown which increased the monk's maximum health, they could easily do more damage than the average health of a player from whichever expansion they were currently in.
You just delete them.
Although there was a little bit of a caveat on it, in that you couldn't actually use the ability on other players. You know an ability hits hard when it has restrictions of not being usable on other players.
I think you could use it on players if it was under 10%
It was also changed over the years to be usable as an execute in some expansions, where today you can actually use it on enemy players, except it works a little bit differently than it did when it was first introduced, where nowadays it counts the damage you do to the target and then will do damage based on the amount of damage you did to that target at the end of the little window it gives you. So it has the potential to do a lot of damage. But it's really on here for its original version of basically doing the monk's health as its damage. So it gets a score.
It made this game so complicated nowadays. By the way, everybody get the fuck over to Silithus. Get the fuck over to Silithus. We've got 1 more spot in my raid. Actually, 2 more spots in my raid. And message me INV for an invite. Everybody should be here by the time I finish this fucking video.
Of about 1.5 times the average player's health as damage.
Can you message one of the warlocks here and ask them to leave and join your group?
And at number 7, we have Light's Wrath, which is the one ability on this list that is used by a healer only. The Disc Priest, to be more precise. The Discipline Priest specifically from Legion, to be even more precise, as this was their artifact weapon ability. Artifact weapon abilities were basically class abilities as a lot of them got turned into class abilities after the expansion was over anyway, so I will count those on this list. Now, what Light's Wrath did was have a long cast time in order to just do one big, hard-hitting spell, because the Disciplined Priest healing was based on how much damage they could do, and this ability would do 10% more damage for every atonement buff you had on people. Now, an average cast of Light's Wrath, assuming you had 10 atonements out for 100% more damage, which was a pretty average number, did not do more damage than the average person's health. It was a pretty big chunk of damage, but it wasn't as hard-hitting as something like a Chaos Bolt, for example.
It's not even
an ability famous for being really hard-hitting.
Yeah.
It did absolutely do more damage than a Chaos Bolt, though, if it was supercharged. You see, pretty much every artifact weapon had a hidden special ability. Most of them were just little RP things out in the open world, but Light's Wrath had a damage component to its hidden ability. You see, once Light Wrath was supercharged, it would increase the damage of your next Light's Wrath cast by 500%, and the ability already hit really hard on its own. So if you were able to get out a couple of atonements, maybe getting out 10 of them to increase the damage by an additional 100%, a Light's Wrath that was supercharged could hit for about 2 times the health of the average player from Legion.
So 8 million?
It was more like 1.75 times more, or 175%. It wasn't a true double, but hitting for nearly double the average health of a player definitely puts it on this list as a very hard-hitting ability, even if Light's Wrath only got supercharged maybe once a week. This hidden little feature so rarely procced that it wasn't even noticeable. And this is why you've never heard anyone complain about this ability in raids or PvP, because they basically got this proc one time a week if they were lucky. I should know, I mained a Disc Priest during that expansion.
That is so fucking cool,
And at number 6, we have another artifact ability, and that's the Warlock's Thalkeel's Consumption.
Oh, I hate
this artifact weapon had the special ability to do a large chunk of damage to your opponent by converting 8% of the health of all of your current summoned demons into that damage.
What a massive
So, Warlock players using this in order to get the highest hitting attack possible would just have a crap ton of demons out, as Demonology Warlocks could summon a lot of demons. And then buffing those demons in order to increase their health. As well as using a legendary item that buffed its damage by a ton more, and a few other things. I won't get into specifics, but basically, they could do about 2 times the average player's health as damage, or more about 190% more. It wasn't consistently more than 2 times, but it was pretty darn close by some of the best players in the game who were able to get it to really big numbers consistently in raids. And then of course, there were some specific dungeons in Legion that would increase the health and damage of everyone in the party. So a group of Warlocks on one of the Warlock Discords would post screenshots to see who could get the largest hitting Thalkeel's Consumption hit in Blackrock Hold on the final boss, with many of the Warlocks getting numbers up to 8 times the average health of a player pretty regularly. It goes to show you how hard this ability hit, when Warlocks on a whole took time to try and see who could get the biggest hit with the ability, even if it was best case scenario conditions. And at number 5, we have Fan of Knives. Now, this is an AoE ability from the Rogue class, but it is on this list for its single target damage, surprisingly, clocking in at 250% damage of the average player's health from its expansion. And of course, this one was in Legion as well. Legion had a lot of really hard-hitting things, and this was entirely because of a combination between some legendaries as well as a few other things. How did this work?
I don't remember this at all.
Basically, rogues had access to a legendary item which would increase the damage of Fan of Knives by 35% every second. Until it capped out at about 30 stacks.
What the fuck?
Or about 1,050% increase to the damage. They had another legendary which gave them a 100% chance to crit while stealth, and for 5 seconds after leaving stealth. And a PvP talent which increased the damage by an additional 150% if it hit 3 targets or more. And a few other damage increases allowed this ability to always crit, do a ton of damage to a single target, as long as you hit 2 other targets as well. And these combos did work in World PvP. So rogues would sometimes go around to small groups of people and just one-shot them with a single Fan of Knives.
Oh my god!
And if the Fan of Knives didn't kill them, then the number 4 spot on this list probably would.
Wow.
And at number 4, we have another rogue ability from Legion, and that's Death from Above / Eviscerate.
Stupid, dude.
Under best case scenarios, a rogue could hit with this ability for about 375% the average health of a player, or a whole 100% more than Fan of Knives. Death from Above was a cooldown-based finisher that rogues used to have, which would do a little bit of damage at first, and then launch the rogue into the air, and then have them slam down and use a buffed version of Eviscerate, which is why I include Eviscerate in this part of the list, because it was literally a part of Death from Above. So, what a rogue could do in order to buff the damage to do as much damage as possible was use a combination of a whole bunch of abilities and items and stuff. Basically, sub-rogues had a few abilities which increased the damage of their finisher moves, including their artifact weapon. They had an ability which just straight up increased their total damage done, which was further...
Do you guys remember back in the day whenever like the game was complex like this? Does anybody remember that? Like, because I was just thinking about it. Does anybody remember that? That was so cool. Back in the day in Legion, yeah, like last year, basically. Fuck, man. Like, I'm just thinking about all these, like, bonuses and shit that you can put together.
Increased by a tier set bonus. They made use of the Legendary, which gave them 100% crit chance when coming out of stealth, and used the damage bonus from Shadow Dance. So, basically what they would do is use all of those buffs, get maximum combo points, and then use Vanish in order to enter stealth, and then they would actually use Death from Above. And as they were launched into the air, you actually had one more global cooldown before the ability would do its second hit.
Yep.
So, they would use Shadow Dance as they were about to land the ability in order to get the Shadow Dance bonus.
Jesus
And with
Christ.
all of this, they were able to get near 4 times the average player's health as damage.
What the?
Of course, all of this was incredibly difficult to align together, assuming best case scenario, but that's kind of what this whole list is about.
That's insane.
And at number 3, we have the Prot Warrior Vengeance Execute from Mist of Pandaria. Pre-nerf. Now, normally execute abilities are the hardest hitting abilities in the game, but the average execute ability only does about 50% of the average player's health as damage under best case scenarios.
I love this.
Which is still a lot of damage.
I was the solo tank for this exact boss. I solo tanked this boss because all the other tanks in our guild were such dog shit that I, as a DPS warrior, went to tank spec and did it for them. And I solo tanked this boss and I did 1,000,000 DPS. It was one of the best fucking times I ever had in Raid. It was so awesome.
Damage, but not enough for most of them to make this list.
Yep.
But despite execute abilities historically hitting the hardest, this is the only one which will appear on this list. And this one is probably the hardest single hitting ability in the game's history, as you'll see once we go over the first 2 spots. But let's go over why this particular execute from this particular point in time in WoW's history hit so hard. Vengeance was a mechanic they added to the game as kind of a way to increase the tank's threat by increasing their damage. So, as the tank took damage, they would get an attack power buff through Vengeance. So, the more the tank got attacked, the more attack power they got. And it used to be there wasn't really a cap on
Stand in the
this.
fire, DPS
Or
higher.
if there was a cap, it was an incredibly big cap.
Yeah.
Because Prot Warriors in this particular time period of a nearly uncapped Vengeance
it was totally
had access
broken,
to the execute ability, which has historically been one of the hardest hitting execute abilities, as shown by the fact that execute abilities are named after it, and could hit with execute for about 1,800% the average health of a player, or 18 times the average player's health as damage. Now, in this time period, that was a lot of damage. A little bit too much damage, one could say. That's more than 4 times more damage than the previous spot on this list. Prot Warriors could easily top the DPS charts once it got to the execute phases.
Oh, it was ridiculous.
So, Blizzard added a cap to Vengeance.
It was completely ridiculous.
Or lowered it if it already existed, to a point where numbers like this were no longer possible.
And also, I think that you only generated Vengeance from, like, your primary target or something like that. I forgot what it was. But, like, if you had a bunch of mobs attacking you, you didn't generate Vengeance at, like, just a scaling number. I forgot exactly what the details were, though. It was so fucking fun, man. It was so fucking fun. Not the start. Yeah, at the start, in tier 14, you were able to do this. I loved doing this. Gearing your DPS characters get blown away by a broken tank. Great game. Oh, I loved it, because I was a tank.
For a while, in the early days of Mist of Pandaria, Prot Warriors had the second hardest hitting ability in the game. And at number 2, we have Combustion. Combustion is a fire mage cooldown that has probably undergone the most amount of changes out of any ability in the game. But for this spot on this list, we'll be talking about Combustion specifically from Cataclysm and early MoP.
Really
what Combustion did in this time was combine all of your dots on the target into one super dot, which would then tick over the next 10 seconds.
Oh!
Now, this one is kind of cheating a little bit, since I'm going to be talking about a dot for this spot on this list, but this was one of the hardest hitting abilities in the game's history. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it and also put it at a high spot on this list, because this super dot could tick for 3,300% the average health of a player, or 33 times the average player's health as damage. This dot did so much damage, a single tick of it would qualify it for this list. And this Combustion super dot existed in the same time period as the Super Prot Warrior Execute from the previous spot on this list. And here's the thing about this dot. There was also an ability in the game at the time that allowed you to spread all of your dots to all nearby targets. And this did include the Super Combustion, giving fire mages the best AoE in the game's history. Now, what allowed Combustion to do so much damage was mainly their Ignite ability. They used to have a dot called Ignite, which would continuously stack every time you got a crit, as it would do about 20% of that crit's damage as a dot. And
this would stack infinitely back in vanilla. Wow. It was completely broken. I want to say one more time, guys, because we're almost done with the video. The crusade will begin very soon. So please go ahead and let's make sure that, look at this, there's some random guys trying to blow up on us. Please make sure that everybody make your way down to Silithus, start summons, all groups, make sure that you have your Warlock and you're summoning with your Warlock. We are going to begin in just a couple of minutes, okay, guys? So just letting you guys know.
Since this dot just constantly stacked, you could get this dot to very high numbers if your crit was high enough. So, in order to do a Super Combustion, you'd have to wait until your Ignite was at a really big level. And there was even add-ons in the game at the time, specifically designed to tell you when to use Combustion, because it was all revolved around how big that Ignite was, because the other dots that fire mages had were pretty reasonable in comparison. And because the Combustion dot relied so much on getting constant crits on one target, it was almost impossible to use it with its high numbers in PvP. So it was never a big issue in that department, and more or less just made fire mages really good at AoE. And there's a reason Combustion doesn't work like this today. Nowadays, Combustion just gives you 100% crit for like 10 seconds or something. They tried really hard to balance the super dot, and eventually just abandoned the idea and changed it into a crit buff instead.
What a bunch of shit.
And at number 1, we have the Wreck Bomb, clocking in at 200 times the damage of the average player's health. This is another one which wasn't really done in just one tick, and in fact was the combination of thousands of hits going off at the same time. But it's a pretty famous event in WoW's history, and I'm sure people won't mind it appearing at the number 1 spot on this list. Basically, Paladins had this talent in Vanilla WoW called Reckoning, which allowed you to store an extra attack every time you were the victim of a critical strike. Except there was no cap on the amount of extra charges you could store. So one Paladin spent 3 hours intentionally getting crit on by mobs in order to store up nearly 2,000 shards of Reckoning, and then went to the world boss, Lord Kazakh, and just smacked him a few times and killed him. It wasn't really all done in one shot. It did take Kazakh a few seconds to die, but I think that was more of a server lag problem than it was the ability not properly one-shotting.
I wish that guy had, dude, I wish that guy had recorded it. I wanted to see, like, what did his screen look like? Like, what was it, just like a million fucking 200s or something? Like, I would be so fucking cool, man. I really wish he had recorded it.
I should say, Blizzard hotfixed Reckoning almost immediately after this was done, and it was changed to only store 4 extra attacks, which seems like a big oversight on their part in the first place. This was the first and only time a player was able to one-shot a raid boss from that current expansion, and that's why it's at the number 1 spot on this list. Alright, and that's the list. If you think I missed any other harder hitting abilities or have ideas for future videos just like this one, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments.
I think that was pretty good. Yeah, that made sense. I hate to say, but like the Cataret bug, yeah, in like Dragon Soul, I remember that. But listen, guys. This has been something I promised. And now it's something that I have delivered. Everyone. Is everyone here?